You're listening to the Bob and Bo Show. Here are your hosts, Ty Bob, Ty Bo, and Sean. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am Ty Bob, joined by Ty Bo and Sean. If you're watching this on YouTube, I am sorry for what your eyes are beholding. And good Lord,
get lost. You're the only person that said anything negative about it.
It's Movember, folks. It's for a good reason.
It's for a good reason. I'll probably take this off eventually. It'll just be a stack.
Tybo, for anybody who doesn't know what Movember is, will you explain it for them really quickly?
So, you look it up on the internet and you can find like places to donate, but it's just like, I mean, I don't know how effective it is, but it's for men's mental health awareness. Of all the people that I know personally or know of that have committed suicide, a majority of them have been male. Male suicide numbers are crazy as they are, but it's just a month to do something funny to raise awareness for that stuff in a world where there's a lot of problems. Men's mental health, it doesn't seem like the biggest issue, but it is an issue. So
I think it's for men's health all over, because if I remember correctly, like through high school and whatnot, when Movember started, it was for testicular cancer awareness as well. So I think they've kind of grouped it all together, if I remember correctly, which is good. Hey, we're getting awareness out there for everyone. It's a fun way to do it. You will not see me shave my face. It's not happening. I will support, but this thing's not going away. With that said, folks, we've had a wild trade deadline end. As we're recording this, it is the 1st of November. Trade deadline ended for us 4 hours ago. So we're going to be going through all of that info. But before we get to the nitty-gritty details of a hot and spicy trade deadline, I believe Tybo has got a hot and spicy top 5 for us.
You're not gonna find much spice on this top 5, Ty Bob. Just to, throw it out there. It's my top 5 desserts. Gonna be a very cool and creamy top 5.
Oh,
But recommended or suggested by Mr. Nichols on Twitter. Doing another suggestion from him. This came along with the potato suggestion. Top 5 ways to prepare potatoes. So that just shows you we're not getting any suggestions in. Let's go, people. Mr. Nichols,
Bob and Bo Show.
Mr. Nichols, I will do your other top 5 of my top 5 desserts. These aren't going to be desserts that I prepare. These are just like my favorite desserts to eat. I do have one honorable mention, going right into it. The drumstick.
oh,
The dipped cone, the nuts on top, a little bit of chocolate at the end of the cone.
Crazy.
It's also not too much. Like I've had some hearty, like big drumsticks in my life, but the little ones that come out of the package are like just perfect. But they're not good enough to make the top 5. They're obviously just an honorable mention tier dessert.
I need to add into that, because there is one that I have had, a drumstick that I have had that I believe would go in your top 5 if you've had. I don't know if you've seen it anywhere, but it is the fried chicken ice cream.
Oh shit.
It's amazing. So what they do is they take the ice cream and they form it into, or they take a chocolate covered pretzel and then they wrap the ice cream around it and form it as if it's a chicken leg. And then they basically wrap it in like, I think it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right? They smash it up and then roll it in there, and then they throw it in like what would be a KFC chicken bucket. They pack it filled with like dry ice, and then they'll ship it around the country. You can't go and buy it. You have to have it shipped to you. Honestly, one of the best things I've ever had, dessert-wise.
wow.
Fantastic.
I'll certainly shake up this top 5 if I've ever had it. But moving on. Number 5. A cheesecake of almost any variation. The
At
classic
5?
New York at 5. Just get ready. Come on.
Okay.
At 5. A classic New York cheesecake with like strawberry on top is probably my preferred, but like there are some really good variations of cheesecake out there that have blown me away. So usually, if it's got cheesecake in the name, I'll get it on a dessert menu. Very versatile. I love making cheesecakes though as well. This might be the only one on my list that I can actually make.
Which is
pretty good
better to
cheesecake.
you, homemade or going out to a restaurant and getting it?
Going out to a restaurant, I'm not. I mean, I can make a good cheesecake, but it's the stuff that makes a cheesecake good. There's like very like small particular things that you could do to it. I don't like have the patience or whatever to do that. So it is what it is. I'd rather have somebody else prepare my cheesecake. Number 4, banana pudding and vanilla wafers, or banana cream pie. There's a lot of fancy variations that I've seen people do online that incorporate banana pudding and vanilla wafers. It's just a match made in heaven. I don't get to eat it very often, but like I can make my own. It doesn't come close to like a fancy restaurant dessert that'll do something special every now and then. But banana pudding and vanilla wafers has been like special occasion thing for me as a kid for my whole life. So not going to escape the top 5. It's a lovely dessert. Number 3, my top 3 are very like the contention is just ridiculous. It could have gone either way. This could have been my number 1, but number 3 is creme brulee. Whenever I go to a fancy restaurant or you know I don't know a date, usually like me and my wife will get our favorite desserts. Always go on creme brulee. That I based on their meant like if we're trying to go somewhere for a special occasion, I'll look at the menu. If they don't have a creme brulee, I'm like, we're not going. Unless they have something else I'm like super wanting to try. If they don't have a creme brulee, I'm not going. So that's
Brulee, fire.
That's at number 3.
that's how seriously I take that. Like creme brulee is the first time I had a creme brulee, it blew my mind. I was like, what is this?
I was on my honeymoon. It was amazing.
Yeah. Number 2, shout out my Aunt Rhonda Hart out there, living mid Missouri, like near Moberly, Missouri, somewhere out there. Blackberry cobbler
Ooh.
and a scoop of ice cream. The tartness, they got to be good blackberries. Like the blackberries have to be in season. They got to be good blackberries. The right person's got to make it. And for me, it's my Aunt Rhonda, maybe my grandma Shirley, maybe even now my cousin Jill. But
So almost anybody now.
it's I mean it not even necessarily family rescue. There's just something in our blood that they know how to make it. So it's fantastic. It's hard to put words to it. Again, one of those desserts that the first time I had it, I just wanted another bowl. I was like, oh my God. And number 1, my wife makes this for me every year on my birthday. We wish it had a better name because I know the whole controversy behind the drink and the name, but an Irish car bomb brownie. You have the 3 different types of alcohol mixed in with the 3 layers. You got brownies on bottom, you got cheesecake in the middle, you got chocolate ganache on top. The ganache has the whiskey, the cheesecake has the Baileys, and the brownies have the beer. And then
I've not had that.
you
I've
bake
had it
the
one or twice there.
yeah, you bake the cheesecake and the brownie together, and then you get the ganache on top and you cool it. And like you can freeze it, it preserves for a long time. When Zoe makes stuff, she can't make small portions. So I get a lot of it made around my birthday. We freeze like a brick of it. But when the first time I had it, I was like, I want this every year on my birthday, and it's worth it to wait a whole year. Because if I had it all the time, I'd be 10 times larger than I am right now. But Irish car bomb brownie. If you've never heard about it, try to Google search a recipe for it because it is divine.
It's interesting. It's a good top 5. I can't say I agree with it. I don't think Sean fully agrees with it. But that's all right.
I
It's
agree with
not
most
ours.
of them on there.
It's yours.
Sean's had the Irish car bomb brownies, so
I
Amazing.
can't I can't disagree with that one because I've never had it. It sounds like it would be amazing. I'm a huge
Delicioso.
I love Guinness. I love Irish car bombs when I go out. So maybe Saturday would be
Maybe.
fun.
It's not my
Saturday.
birthday. It's not my birthday.
I'm talking about the drink.
Oh, you never had an Irish car bomb?
No, I have. I haven't had the
Oh,
brownie. I'm saying when Whiskey Fest is over, maybe we can go over to the pub and grab us a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that sounds like we're trying to black out, man. Because that's what happened the last time I did
We'll figure it out. For anybody who doesn't know, Weston, Missouri does have their Whiskey Fest. It's the Weston Tobacco Whiskey Fest on Saturday. If you're going to be there, find us. We all three will be there. It'll be good to meet some of you guys.
It's a team building activity.
Exactly. Sean's making the trip from
Whiskey and cigars.
exactly.
Yep.
Sean's making the trip from old Tigerville. So if you listen,
He got it right this time. He knows where you live, Sean.
I know where you live now.
That's troublesome.
Come and meet us there. There are tickets online. You can find them. Just Google Weston Whiskey Fest. It's one of the best times of the year for me. So we'll be happy to see you there if you make it. With that said, folks, deadline day was incredible. This is the largest amount of trades I have seen in my lifetime in remembrance. I think, Sean, you were saying it's the most trades at a deadline that we've seen in NFL history.
Yeah, I believe I saw that a tweet today was, I believe today was 10. Not too certain on that, but I believe I saw it was 10.
Quite a
They're
few.
they're trying to steal the NBA's only gimmick. They're already killing in viewers, but they just want to steal their gimmick, and we need to make a bunch of trades at the trade deadline.
We're taking Christmas Day away from NBA this year too.
Yeah,
might as well. Might as well. I think there was roughly 16. I've got a bunch of updates here. We'll go through them. To start off, we'll just go with the Kansas City Chiefs to kick it off. Obviously, we had the Kadarius Toney trade, which happened before the weekend, before Week 8 games kicked off. That podcast has already come out. Go back and listen to it if you haven't, because we give our thoughts on how that should shape Kansas City's future for the rest of this season and for the next couple of years, because he's got some years left on the contract. But the Chiefs did release some news after the deadline was over. Well, before I get there, because this impacts that, the Kansas City Chiefs have traded at the deadline, excuse me, a Rashad Fenton to the Atlanta Falcons for a conditional 7th round pick. That clears up $1.4 million in cap space. That comes from at Matt Verderami. I believe he was the first one to break that news. So very interesting. The Kansas City Chiefs believe that they have enough cap space, or excuse me, enough corners and DBs to be able to cover that room now that everybody's becoming healthy, because about 2 minutes after that news was dropped, the Kansas City Chiefs at Chiefs dropped the news themselves that they have activated cornerback Trent McDuffie from the injured reserves. So he is back, guys, knowing that we've got Kadarius Toney. We've gotten rid of Rashad Fenton, which adds $1.4 million in cap space. I believe that puts us around $4.4 million to operate and bring anybody in who is a free agent. Maybe Ndamukong Suh, maybe OBJ, maybe no one. What does this outlook look like for the Kansas City Chiefs operating through the rest of the season?
I think this looks like similar to last year, not really with the Melvin Ingram thing, but actually a few years ago, whenever Terrell Suggs was released, a situation like that could come about with another team. Somebody is going to be released at the end of the year. He's good chance they could clear waivers and they get to pick where they go. So why not have a little bit more money for the Chiefs there? And with Trent McDuffie coming back, that's like trading for a player as well, because we have not had him at all this year besides week 1.
Trading him from the IR.
Yeah.
But speaking of players getting released, there's a couple cornerbacks floating out there. Sidney Jones from the Seahawks. There's another name out there. So those are sneaky moves that I think our fan base probably isn't hoping for or thinking that they're going to make. But the type of move that I think Brett Veach would would do. But I think this is just kind of like a standard business decision in the NFL. We're freeing a little bit of money on the books. We getting a conditional seventh round pick. So I mean, at minimum, it's a possible cheap body on the roster next year. We've talked about how many holes this team is going to have next year. So it's it maybe not a no brainer, but it's just like a why not, type of thing. We have players that are playing better than Rashad Fenton, and
A seventh round pick at that.
yeah, Josh Williams, he's a seventh rounder, right?
Thought it was
And
Jalen.
it's yeah, Jalen Watson was the seventh
Jalen
rounder.
Watson. Oh my bad.
Josh Williams was the fourth rounder. I won't give you a fine for
And
that.
yeah, well, you could if you want to.
But what you were talking about, that report came in from at Schultz under report. He said they're releasing news of Sidney Jones. He's only 26. He did start all of last season for the Seahawks, so that would be a big pickup. Probably stash away on the practice squad and see if any injuries arise.
Yeah.
Going throughout, that wouldn't be a bad place to start stashing some of these guys, but they do have to clear waivers.
Because I think somebody else has tweeted this as well, but we are banking a lot on the health of some young guys. One who's already had a trip to the IR. So
let's start off with our news starting on Saturday. There was a big trade in the NFL from at Adam Schefter. Compensation update. This was post the trade of Bears linebacker Roquan Smith that went to the Ravens. He said the Bears have traded Roquan Smith in exchange for a second and a fifth round pick. So big pickings for Roquan Smith to the Bears. I'm assuming not as much as they were wanting, but he did have low contract years. I believe this was the last year on the deal. And that's a big, big, big pickup for the Ravens. Hurts the defense for the Bears, but the Ravens got some much needed help on that defense, knowing that their corners or a lot of the DBs went down.
yeah, I seems more of a move that the Ravens would have liked to make with a better record at this point. It's not quite the all-in move that maybe somebody or some in their fan base or some on their team were hoping for. Because Roquan Smith, oh my goodness, is not like he was playing. He was having one of his better years, and the Bears were still second worst on defense. So that just shows you. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about it because they're criticizing how much the Ravens gave up for him. Even when we think it's not like a 2 and a 5, it's not a lot. There's people out there that still think they overpaid because how much can that type of linebacker make a difference on the game? And it might not be that much. And I don't think that move puts the Ravens in any better playoff situation. Like they're still not beating the Bills. They might not even beat the Bengals. I know they did by a little bit, but I'm talking about in the playoffs,
No, I get you.
I will say it will help them with tackling because Roquan is leading the NFL in tackles this year. He's not going to do much for sacking or anything like that, but tackling is fine. And the Bears did not want to pay him what he's going to be getting this next contract because that was going to be crazy money for a linebacker that does not sack the quarterback. But this looks great for the Bears for in future years.
He is a fairly good coverage linebacker. I think it works out well for both sides, and for both sides being the teams, and I think it works out very well for Roquan Smith, just simply because why do you want to stay with the Bears at this point? They traded away your friends. They're obviously not willing to give you a contract, and they haven't really had a betterment to get better. It's not a team I would want to necessarily be a part of.
I think their other deadline move is actually pretty interesting. They're bringing in more draft capital. They're going to be younger next year, and on an already young team. Hopefully, they get some help on the offensive line. But Claypool, maybe not leading, but like another target next to Mooney, um, seems like a decent formula for the offense. And um, who knows what they could do in the draft next year.
Yeah, they have $100 million in cap space after this year, so
Right.
they're gonna be making a lot of moves.
Yeah, though that trade that Tybo was talking about comes from Field Yates and Adam Schefter. The Bears have traded for Steelers wide receiver Chase Claypool. That trade ended up being a second round pick from the Bears going to the Steelers for Chase Claypool. That's a big time move. I've seen a lot of people give the grade of a C minus to a D minus for the Bears. They believe that they gave up too high of a pick. We do know that Green Bay was supposedly, quote unquote, all in on getting Chase Claypool, but they were not willing to give up more than a third round pick. So clearly they were not all in on getting Chase Claypool. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I thought they put up the same. I thought they put up the same offer as the Bears, but the Bears were going to have a. They thought we're going to have a higher pick than the Packers.
They did end up going back with a second. The initial reports were they weren't going to go higher than a third. They did go the same route with the second round pick. It was just expected that the Bears, even with Chase Claypool, would have a worse record and therefore a higher pick
Right.
than the Packers. We'll go on to the next bit of news. PFF early in the day had released that the Rams had offered 2 first round picks for Carolina Panthers Brian Burns, but the Panthers turned that one down. It's 2 first round picks. Now, with some context, the Rams don't have a first round pick for this 2023 draft, so that would be a first round pick for the 24 draft and then the 25th draft. I can see why they turned it down. At the same time, it's 2 first round picks for a non-quarterback. Very interesting. But there's not much news there. It was also expected that they just weren't going to trade him. Um, there was another big one coming from Adam Schefter. The Vikings traded for Detroit Lions tight end TJ Hawkinson. They got Hawkinson and a fourth round pick. A 23 fourth round pick and a 24 fourth round pick, while the Lions get a 23 second round pick and a 24 third round pick. Seems like the Lions don't get the fair share of that deal in my mind. What are you guys thinking?
The one thing the Vikings really need is a tight end. Irv Smith Jr. just went out pretty much for the year. Go and get TJ Hawkinson from one of your division rivals for really doesn't seem like that much, but it's the Lions, man.
For somebody that's shown the level of talent and ability that TJ Hawkinson has, last year, this year, he looks pretty good. Um, but I don't necessarily grade this very highly on either side. I think it's a really, really dumb move by the Lions, giving a division rival a weapon like that. They're basically just giving them what they need to what the Vikings feel like they can compete in the playoffs. But I don't think TJ Hawkinson, while he is a great player and a great tight end and probably a little bit of an upgrade from Irv Smith Jr., I don't think it changes up their offense as that much, to where I think, I still think they're contenders, but I don't know. Looking into the season now, I don't know if they can beat the Eagles.
No, I don't think that helps them beat the Eagles, and it could. You look at the Vikings, and they're a predominantly running team. Given T.J. Hawkinson is a fairly good pass catcher, I'd say as a pass catching tight end, he's probably up around the top 15 in the league, which obviously isn't that great. But he was also not being thrown to that much in Detroit. He is also a great blocking tight end coming out of Iowa, like most Iowa tight ends are. see Greg Kittle. So it is it's an interesting move, but Tybo, yeah, I don't think that really moves the needle on either side. Uh, we did have a blockbuster trade today from Adam Schefter. Denver has traded linebacker Bradley Chubb, outside linebacker, to the Dolphins for a package that includes the 2023 first round pick. It also included another pick. Let's see. Yeah, it was a 23 first round pick from San Francisco, a 24 fourth round pick, and Chase Edmonds. Denver which goes to Denver. Miami got Bradley Chubb, obviously, and a 25 fifth round pick. Big numbers. Miami's going to have to end up paying him as well. What's this looking like for Miami's cap situation that's going to be going on? You just paid a big old contract to Tyreek. Tua is in his third season. So he's got one more year plus his fifth year option. Waddle's locked up for a bit, but you got guys on defense that need to get paid. You got guys all around that are going to need to be paid to go along and push that into the Super Bowl. How does this one push them for this year, and two affect how they can build their team moving forward?
Is that a fine for the double question?
That's a good question. That's you guys. You guys set that precedent.
We'll play the tape on that, and we'll decide. But I think that might have been a fine because I
got lost.
I was looking at some other stuff, and I also like, where is he going? Were you talking about the Chubb trade or the Jeff Wilson?
It's the Chubb trade. How does it affect the cap situation in being able to build their team, and how does it propel them forward for this season, trying to obtain or at least reach the Super Bowl?
They think they're going all in because, like, I mean, you can't talk about just the Chubb trade and not talk about the Jeff Wilson trade. Like, Miami thinks they're going all in. I still don't think they're good enough to be more than a first or second round exit in the playoffs. But I don't know much about the numbers. They signed a veteran pass rusher to kind of complete their defense, or maybe help round it out. And I don't know if he can complete it or not. But they move out Chase Edmonds. They bring in Jeff Wilson. They like their offense. They like what they can do, and they're trying to bolster their defense to be competitive. But I don't think this doesn't get them to their immediate goal if it's Super Bowl. Like, maybe they just want to get to the playoffs and feel good about this year and build momentum going into the next year. But this isn't. You're not contending with the Chiefs and the Bills and some of the other teams in the AFC playoffs.
I do think the Jeff Wilson trade will be very smooth since Mike McDaniels did just leave San Francisco. So he will hop right in and have an impact right away.
That's why they've wanted nothing but ex-Niners running backs.
And how, Sean, how does this affect their ability to build their team for the future, knowing that they're either going to have to pay this guy or that they just gave up a first round pick for a guy that's going to be there for the rest of this season?
I think they're going to try to make him the staple of their defense now. Probably let some of their cornerbacks go that are going to walk and demand some money. Tua's still on his rookie year. Jalen's still on his rookie year. You paid Tyreek already. You have the main guys already there for a little bit. They just need a few more pieces to really solidify their core, and they can build out in the draft.
And that's kind of what the Chiefs have done in the past. They let cornerbacks go all the time. You want to build the D line and pay your cornerbacks as little to nothing as possible. There's a lot of young talent out there. We saw in this last draft that can hold their own. I'm not going to say hold an NFL wide receiver, but hold their own against them. So that's not a common, or that's not an uncommon philosophy.
Yeah, go back and see the Kendall Fuller deal. Brought him in for a couple years on the rest of his rookie contract, and then let him walk back to the Washington Commies. Speaking of Commies, there was a trade coming out of there. They traded away corner Williams Jackson to the Steelers. I believe it was for a 7th rounder or a 6th rounder. That came from Dov Kleiman. Interesting deal. He was a fringe player. They did threaten to just cut him should a trade not be done. Um, he would have had to clear waivers, and then who knows where he would have gone. It's a decent pickup for the Steelers, probably just a depth piece.
Well, the big reason they wanted to trade him was because he was more of a man cornerback and they played a lot of zone. And even whenever they got him into Washington, the coach and the defensive coordinator were like very confused with that. It's like we play mainly zone, but okay.
Yes. Just a couple quick ones here to finish up. The Jaguars, in an interesting trade, the Jaguars acquired Falcons receiver Calvin Ridley. The compensation was finalized. Seeing if I can find it here. I did not save that. I believe it was a conditional fourth rounder that could turn into a third rounder that could turn into a second rounder if certain marks are met. I believe as long as he's on it's a for sure a fifth rounder. If he stays on the roster for next season, it will turn into a third rounder. If they extend Calvin Ridley, it will turn into a second rounder. So it is a future pick, not one that'll come up in 23. I believe it was either 24 or 25. What's interesting about this is the team that he is now currently on is also the team that faced the Falcons when Calvin Ridley placed his bet and got suspended. He placed a bet last year, which got him the 1 year suspension. It was on the Falcons and Jaguars. He obviously bet for the Falcons to win, but just an interesting little piece there. Obviously, will not do anything for this season as he is still suspended, but could go in. And we know that Calvin Ridley is a pretty good wide receiver. He's still young at 27. I don't know if that shakes up a whole lot, but what are your guys' thoughts?
Well, you can't talk about this trade and not talk about the betting situation. It's the definition of irony. It's good TV. I hope the people that orchestrated this trade did it on purpose, because it makes the NFL watchable. Like the irony is great. I love it. The Jaguars need to get rid of Trevor Lawrence, and they might actually have a team. So next year.
Yeah, that's all I can say about it. Let's see if Trevor Lawrence is a bust or not.
But we'll find
Big
out
bust.
very quickly. I think he's a
big old
solid,
bust. A super
average
tall bust.
quarterback. Very average.
Yeah.
The Broncos traded per Ian Rappaport. The Broncos traded to get a little bit of depth from the Jets. It was one of their edge rushers, Jacob Martin. Not really much to go in there. I think the Jets traded away Martin plus a couple of picks and got one pick back. It was just to fill some depth with Bradley Chubb leaving, but in a somewhat surprising and you could call it a blockbuster move if you wanted to from Adam Schefter and Tom Pelissaro. The Colts traded Naheem Hines to the Buffalo Bills. It was for Zach Moss and a sixth rounder. A fifth rounder and Naheem Hines will go to the Bills. So a little bit of movement there. The Bills, or excuse me, to the Colts. The Bills did need not necessarily a return specialist. They'll get that in Naheem Hines if they need to use it, but a guy who will go in and compete for a 1A, 1B situation in the backfield, moving James Cook down to the third string.
Well, because they sent Zach Moss, right?
They did
They
send Zach
they
Moss,
sent a
who
low
was
depth chart guy, and they got in somebody who's just going to compete. It's a move that I don't like because Naheem Hines has been impressive in the past couple of years, not only just in the NFL but specifically against us. He's made some big plays against the Chiefs, and I hate players that do that. So
it would have been
now
nice
he's
to
on
get
the
in.
Bills, and he's probably going to make plays against us in the playoffs, and it's going to aggravate me. And I'm going to be like, I talked about this, and
It would have been nice to get Naheem Hines in, send Rojo out, who obviously doesn't want to be here. That brings in a return specialist that's clearly needed for the Kansas City Chiefs. But at the end of the day, I think bringing in Kadarius Toney does help us in the areas that we needed it in, anyways. Um, and I think that does it for the trade deadline. I did find one here I'm not going to shout out the account, but there was apparently talks from inside that the Kansas City Chiefs were in talks for a few pieces. One was being an offensive tackle. One was Josh Allen, the defensive end from the Jaguars. There was obviously talk about Brian Burns, which was never going to happen. And then finally, which was a surprise, a little bit of a surprise, we were in the market for a running back. I believe a few calls were made about Naheem Hines, but nothing obviously was able to appear for the Kansas City Chiefs on deadline day. Overall, there are some pretty big moves. What are your guys' final thoughts on deadline day as a whole? It was pretty interesting for me just going through and refreshing Twitter. I think it burned out my phone a little bit there, but it was pretty fun to see all these deals moving and shaking in the last couple of hours of the day.
Yeah, it was
And
very exciting to see. I don't think anybody really made any blockbuster trades that will set them over the top for the year, like we have seen in past years. But it was nice to see a few more trades happen this year.
I think the closest was the Bills. Um, Even though they've had injuries on defense, and maybe they could have used a piece back there. This this just adds another playmaker to their offense, and he's kind of slept on, but a piece like that in a Buffalo Bills offense, if he gels, if he fits the system, if he does what they're hoping to, and be a return specialist, like the Bills are just going to be that much more aggravating for us in the playoffs because our defense is bad. So, it is what it is. The deadline was, entertaining to say the least. I think there were some fun moves made. I think Claypool to the Bears and what they're planning for in the next year is going to be hopeful for them, but maybe fun to watch. And also, I think it's going to be funny to see the Miami Dolphins fall short with all the moves that they're made. So, but yeah, NFL is good TV still.
Great TV. For all of you Chiefs fans who believe that the Chiefs were going to make a deal on the deadline day legitimately, or have a real thought that the Kansas City Chiefs should or will pick up uh, Odell Beckham Jr. or Ndamukong Suh before the end of the season, I got to tell you, I have a fantastic piece of property. It is beachfront. You can look out over the ocean. It's in Raytown, Missouri. All right. So hit me up. Let me know. I got that beautiful piece of property right there for you.
It's at a very affordable price too.
Very affordable.
They're saving all this stuff for next year. All the room that they're making, all the picks that they're acquiring, they're saving it for next year. I think some bigger moves will be made next season.
Massive.
But it's fun to speculate. I'd like to have Ndamukong Suh on the team. I think that would be a better ad than Odell at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I always say great teams make moves in the off season. They don't make them during the season. And that's just and in Chiefs history, it is shown to be true. With that, folks, we've got the rest of the season coming up. We've got on Thursday coming out the Kansas City Chiefs. On Sunday night football, we'll be playing the Titans. It will be one hell of a game, as I believe Malik Willis will go back to the bench.
Ooh.
Ryan Tannehill will come back off of injury. We'll have to see how that one goes. So make sure to check us back out on Thursday. All platforms. Make sure to get Tybo your top fives that you would like to hear from him at Bob and Bo Show. And as always, go Chiefs.
Go
Go
Chiefs!
Chiefs!